Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So taking a look at Special Booster 1.5, there's definitely a lot of new and exciting cards, possibilities, and decks added to the game, and one of the bigger and stronger decks coming out of that booster is going to be the ShineGreymon deck. For those who don't know what ShineGreymon is doing, he is basically a control-based deck where you're trying to utilize a whole bunch of tamers to gain some additional passive benefits while using them for fodder for ShineGreymon's big removal ability that you could utilize in many different ways. So, going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Cupimon. So Cupimon is a really solid Digitama for the deck because it has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking, if we have 5 or more security cards, then we get to draw one card. So this is really good because we do need to draw cards just because we do need to see some very specific cards in order to make our plays as powerful as they possibly can. And Cupimon allowing us to draw cards is definitely really nice. This is more of an early game kind of a card rather than a mid to late game kind of card because 5 security is relatively hard to maintain, but the fact that we still get to draw cards or potentially draw cards off of Cupimon is definitely why we are running at least one copy of it. But the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Upamon. So Upamon has a very similar style of effect to Cupimon. It is a on-attacking ability, except that this is once per turn, and the condition isn't where we need to have 5 or more, but we need to have 3 or less security in order to draw one card. So maintaining 3 or less security is definitely a lot easier than maintaining 5 or more. So we are going to be able to draw off of Upamon more often than we're going to draw off of Cupimon. And we still, again, need to draw cards. And having Digitamas to help draw us cards is definitely really good for the deck. Next, onto the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Patamon. So this Patamon is really powerful for the deck just because it has a nice on-play ability of being able to check the top 4 cards of our deck and adding all yellow tamers among them into our hand, and then the rest go onto the bottom. So because we are going to be playing with a whole bunch of yellow tamers, having this Patamon to help dig out those yellow tamers and potentially more than one yellow tamer is definitely something we really want, just because we want to play our yellow tamers so that way we could build as powerful of a board state for ShineGreymon when we're ready to play him. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Labramon. So Labramon is a really powerful Digimon for the deck because it has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when an opponent's Digimon is deleted by having their DP reduced to 0, then we get to draw one card. So we are going to be playing a whole bunch of different cards to try to reduce the opponent's DP to 0, and Labramon will allow us to draw cards for doing so. So again, drawing cards is really good, and that's why we're playing Labramon. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Salamon. So this version of Salamon is really good just because it is the value-efficient vanilla rookie of the deck, just because, again, low play cost, low evo cost makes it really efficient. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Patamon. So this version of Patamon is really good just because it's doing something very similar to Labramon, except it is once per turn, and instead of drawing a card, it is allowing us to gain a memory, and being able to gain memory is really big and important for the deck just because we could definitely utilize that memory in a whole bunch of different ways to make our plays more powerful and efficient, and to extend them, or to give the opponent even less memory than they might have been working with otherwise. And again, that's just really powerful of a thing to do. You could kind of mix it and play around with the ratios between Patamon and Labramon, but I just find this to be working for me, so that's just what I have. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of GeoGreymon. So GeoGreymon is in here because he has this nice, really powerful inheritable ability where he gives a when attacking ability. If we have 3 or more yellow tamers in play, then one of our opponent's Digimon gets minus 2000 DP for the turn. So again, we are going to try to control the field and making sure that we have ways to consistently reduce the opponent's DP is definitely something we're really interested in playing, and since we're already going to be playing a whole bunch of tamers, his ability is going to be online more often than it's not. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Turuiemon. So Turuiemon is just another value-efficient vanilla card. The big reason on why we're trying to play the card is the fact that it has this really low evolution cost compared to the rest of the other Digimon in his level, and this allows us to just be able to play our higher levels that much more efficiently, and that's just something we really want because we want to try to get into our higher levels as efficiently as possible. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Unimon. So Unimon is in here just because he is the blocker of the deck, and we still want to run blockers, and blockers are still important, so we just need to run Unimon. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of RizeGreymon. So RizeGreymon is probably one of the most important cards in the entire deck next to ShineGreymon himself, just because of what this card is doing for the deck. So he has 2 really powerful abilities. His first ability is a when Digivolving ability, where you get to play 1 yellow tamer from your hand for free, but you don't get any of its on-play abilities. So just that ability alone is what is separating ShineGreymon from the rest of the other tamer-based decks, where you need to have a tamer on the field, just because all of the other decks don't have a card like RizeGreymon where you just get to play 1 for free, and it really just helps you set up your ShineGreymon really easily and really efficiently, especially if you're playing it in combination with Patamon to try to help draw them out. It's just a really powerful ability to have, just because you don't actually need to hard play your tamers half the time. Now, you do still have to hard play your tamers every now and then, but the fact that you have something like Rize where it could just play them for free definitely is a huge part of how the deck wants to function. Then, on top of which, he has another powerful inheritable ability, where during your turn, while you have 3 or more yellow tamers in play, this Digimon gains Security Tech +1. So not only is he playing your tamers for free, but he's also allowing you to deal more damage to your opponent with the ability to give the Mega he's Digivolving into Security Tech +1, and that's just pretty good because it increases the overall damage output of the deck, making it so that it can deal even more damage than what it could normally. Next up, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Sirenmon. So Sirenmon is just the value vanilla card we have for our level 5 slot, just because, again, low play cost, low evo cost makes it a really good tempo and efficiency tool. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Angewomon. So this Angewomon is the BT-03 version of Angewomon, and she has 2 really powerful abilities. So her first ability is a when Digivolving ability, where we can make one of our opponent's Digimon have Security Tech -2, so that way it can deal less damage, so that way it could not break our security or not hit us for lethal damage. So that's already pretty decent. And then on top of which, she has a really good inheritable ability, which is really insane, where it's a when attacking ability. If we have 3 or fewer cards in our security, then we get to play 1 yellow level 3 Digimon from our hand for free. And that's just really powerful, because the best target that we have to utilize this card with is going to be Patamon, so that way we could utilize Patamon's ability to then continue to dig for our tamers. So overall, Angewomon is just a very powerful card for the deck to be playing with. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 2 copies of SlashAngemon. So SlashAngemon is just another really powerful control card that we have access to, just because he has a really powerful when Digivolving ability, where one of your opponent's Digimon gets -8,000 DP until the end of the turn. So the whole idea of the deck is try to reduce all of the opponent's Digimon's DP down to 0, so that way we could delete them, so that way we could gain some additional benefits while removing the body off of the field, and SlashAngemon is just a really good Digimon for fitting that role. And then the last Mega of the deck is going to be 4 copies of ShineGreymon. So ShineGreymon is an insanely powerful Digimon because he has 2 really strong abilities. So his first ability is a when Digivolving ability, where we get to suspend all of our yellow tamers in play, and then for each yellow tamer we suspend, we get to activate the following effect. And the effect that we get to activate is one of our opponent's Digimon gets -4,000 DP until the end of the turn. So the more tamers we have in play, the more powerful his ability becomes, and we could utilize his ability in many different ways, where we could stack it on one larger Digimon to try to get rid of a large body, or we could utilize it to basically machine gun the opponent's smaller Digimon down, so that way we could delete multiple Digimon. So there's just a whole bunch of different utility on how we could utilize his ability, but the fact that he is very powerful and very efficient at controlling the field the second he's played is definitely very powerful. And then on top of which, we have all of the same type of synergies that we had with SlashAngemon, where we could pair it up with Labramon and Patamon to gain some additional resources, or we could pair this up with GeoGreymon, so that way when he swings we could continue to minus the opponent's DP even further. And then on top of all of that, he has a really good secondary ability, where during your turn, this Digimon gets +1,000 DP for each tamer we have in play. So he's just, again, a really powerful Digimon for the deck to be playing around with, and is definitely the whole reason why the deck kind of exists the way it does. Next, on to the option cards, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Glorious Burst. So Glorious Burst is a pretty decent option card just because it has a whole bunch of synergy with the deck, and it has a really powerful ability where we could reduce the memory cost of this card by 1 for each yellow tamer we have in play. So ideally we want to have as many yellow tamers in play, but even just reducing it by like 2 or 3 just makes this card even more efficient than it normally would have been. And then on top of that, it has a very powerful main ability where we get to reduce the DP of one of our opponent's Digimon by 12,000 for the turn. So this is basically acting as a huge removal card, and the fact that it gets cheaper the more tamers we have in play definitely makes it a lot more appealing and a lot more enticing to want to play. The only downside to the card is the fact that it doesn't have a security effect, but that's okay because we have ways to get around that. Next, onto the tamers, I'm going to be running 3 copies of TK Takaishi. So this version of TK is from BT-01, and he's definitely a really powerful tamer just because he's going to be the primary memory fixing tamer of the deck. So that way, whenever the opponent is trying to choke us on memory, they really can't just because he'll always be setting us to 3 memory. And then on top of which, he has a really powerful on-play ability where we get to look at our security stack, and then we get to reveal 1 card from among it and add it to our hand, and then if that card is yellow, then we get to recover 1. So this is kind of how, like, if Glorious Burst ends up in our security, we have a way of grabbing it back, but this ability is really, really powerful just because we have an extra resource that we could check for extra consistency on figuring out what cards we want and need at the time that he's played, and add it to our hand. And because all of the cards that we're playing with are yellow, we'll never have to worry about not being able to recover 1. But as long as we are able to check our security, then we are able to recover 1. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Kari. So this Kari is the BT-02 version of Kari, and she is really good just because she has a very powerful passive ability where at the start of your turn, if you have 3 or fewer security cards, then we get to gain 1 memory. So if we are sitting at that 3 threshold, we're sitting on a TK and we're sitting on a couple of Karis, then we could start our turn with 4 plus memory, and that's just really, really powerful to think about because we could make so many plays with just having a decent amount of memory. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 2 copies of the starter deck TK. So this TK is really nice just because he's a very efficient card to play. So compared to a lot of the other tamers, having a 2-cost memory versus 3 or 4 definitely makes him a lot easier to just throw on the field. And then on top of which, he has a really nice ability where during your opponent's turn, all of your security Digimon get plus 2,000 DP. So the DP buff doesn't really matter as much. It could come in handy depending on some of the other cards you could think about running, but regardless, just increasing the DP of your security Digimon still isn't a bad thing to do, but most of the time we're just going to be utilizing him just for the tamer body, just so that way we can make ShineGreymon even more effective. And then yellow has just a whole bunch of other tools that you could think about utilizing depending on the type of support cards you want to give to your ShineGreymon. So yellow also has access to an Agumon. So this Agumon's really nice just because it has a good inheritable ability of when attacking. If you have 3 or more yellow tamers in play, then you get to draw 1 card. So this is just an alternate way for the deck to be drawing cards off of the inheritable of a rookie body. And then you could also think about utilizing Labramon, because Labramon has a very powerful on-play ability where you get to look at the top card of your security stack, and then you get to add that card to your hand, and then if you do, you get to draw 1 card. So this is just another really good and powerful consistency tool where you are reducing your own security so that way you're easily putting yourself within that 3 threshold. And then on top of that, you're also drawing basically 2 cards, which again is just really, really powerful just because seeing your cards allows you to make better plays. And then if you want, you could think about utilizing Gatomon. So Gatomon is basically just a cheaper version of GeoGreymon. Its ability is basically the same thing except less powerful because there's less restrictions on it. But the fact that it's a nice inheritable of when attacking, you get to minus 1,000 on one of your opponent's Digimon is still really good to think about having. Then you also have access to a couple of decent recovery cards. So Angewomon is definitely a really good recovery type card where you really are trying to utilize him for his on-play ability to recover 1. And then because he is a level 5, you recovered 1 and then you just go straight up into Shine. So that's just a really powerful line of play you could do. And then on top of which, ShineGreymon could also benefit from his inheritable ability, where during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for every 3 security that we have. So we're really only trying to keep ourselves at that 3 threshold, so really he's only going to be increasing himself by 1000, but that's still pretty decent considering all of the other support that we have for the card. If you want another tempo tool, then Angewomon is definitely a really good tempo tool. This one isn't as efficient to just hard play as Cupimon, but the fact that it still can digivolve for 2 on a level 5 is still something we're very interested in. And then continuing on the theme of recovery, if you want to support ShineGreymon that way, you also have access to Angewomon, where she has a nice when digivolving ability, where if you have 3 or less security, then you get to recover 1. So this just ensures that you're going to be staying as healthy as possible. And then another card to play around with for that recovery type strategy is Magnadramon, where Magnadramon has this very powerful on-play ability where if you have 3 or fewer cards in your security, then you get to recover 2. So this is really good to getting back up to 5, so that way you could trigger Cupimon with, but it's just really good at just trying to keep you alive in general, just because recovering 2 is a lot. And then on top of that, it has a very powerful when attacking ability where you get to play a level 3 yellow Digimon from your hand for free. So this is similar to what Angewomon is doing in the deck from BT-03, except this is just on Magnadramon, and then again, we could utilize that synergy just to play a whole bunch of bodies, start some new evolution chains, or try to use those bodies to aggress with. And then yellow has some other option cards that you could think about utilizing. So you could think about utilizing Lightning Paw, where it has a really powerful main ability of up to 3 of your opponents' level 3 Digimon get minus at 4000 DP until the end of the turn. So this is kind of like your anti-Rookie Rush card, even though ShineGreymon could just machine gun them down. It's just if they're trying to aggress on you early enough and you can't get into your shine fast enough, let alone with a good setup, then Lightning Paw definitely can help buy you some time to get to a more advantageous board state. And then on top of which it has a nice security effect of activating its main effect, so if they are just swinging freely away at your security and they hit a Lightning Paw, then they're going to be in some real trouble. Then they also get access to Eden's Javelin. So Eden's Javelin is just another powerful removal type card where it has a main ability of drawing you 1. And then if you want to play something a little bit more tried and true, you could just play something like 7 Heavens where you get to minus 10,000 DP from one of your opponent's Digimon for the turn. So for the most part, this is what ShineGreymon is going to look like in Special Booster 1.5, and it definitely is a very powerful deck with a whole bunch of flexible options. The core of the deck is still going to be relatively the same, where you're just going to play Rise, Shine, and then 8 to 10 Tamer cards, and it's definitely going to be a really powerful deck. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.